In this video, we're going to focus on the major architectural static meshes to block in our environment. I sped up this entire video so you can see the entire process. The very first thing you want to start with is the major architectural elements that will define the structure. So things like floor, walls, and ceiling is what you want to focus on very early in this process. There should be absolutely no detailing being done. You want to focus on the major architectural pieces that define the structure. So we already started off by setting up the ground floor, which helped us to define where the walls are going to go. And then I inserted the ceiling. So now we got the major interior already started. I also went ahead and inserted doorways, and I am beginning to insert windows. And I'm making sure that the windows, the doorways, the walls, and the ceiling all line up. If they don't line up very early, then everything else will be thrown off as we begin to duplicate them and extend the hallway. So I am making sure and double checking that there are no gaps and that all of the static meshes are being snapped to each other. During this early process of blocking in our major architectural static meshes, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces around and finding how they should work with each other. There's a lot of variations that you can use with modular meshes. So you will find yourself a lot moving static meshes, seeing how they look next to each other, deleting them, reinserting them, and trying different combinations of how they should fit to each other. Here I decided that the hallway should be extended and that I should include an additional wall and column combination. So during the early stages of static mesh blocking, I am still refining the layout slightly. I am using the BSP brush template as a guideline to follow, but static meshes is what's going to make up this environment. So they become more important during this process, but I am still following the template, the BSP template that we set up in the beginning. So once I found the window wall column combination that I like, I am taking all of the static meshes and then beginning to duplicate down the hallway. So I spent a little bit of time finding the right static mesh combination using a wall, window, and a column. And once I found that right combination where the static meshes look good next to each other, I duplicate them to other sections of the map. So find that right combination of static meshes, construct something interesting, and then once you like that combination, then you can duplicate it. And this will save you a lot of time. I am also on a continuous lookout for any gaps that I could have created between static meshes. I want to make sure that in the early stages of this process, I avoid any gaps or any inconsistencies with static meshes overlapping each other. Since this is a modular set that all of the static meshes snap together, if a few static meshes create a gap or overlap where I don't want them to, then it's just going to offset the rest of the creation. When you first begin using static meshes to block in the major architectural pieces of your structure, you want to focus on the focal point of your environment. A focal point is the most important visual element of your map. This will vary from project to project. In our case, it is the main hallway, so I wanted to make sure that most of the time is spent on where the player is going to be or what I want to show in this environment, where the screenshots are going to be taken from, where the fly-through is going to be created. So the most important visual section of your level, it is where you want to spend most of your time detailing and focusing on. Once the main hallway was blocked in, it is time to begin to expand to the side hallways. You can see that I'm still tweaking some of the floor pieces and making sure that everything is being snapped together. I've already included the stairs, the side walls, and I'm beginning to go up into the second floor. I have also been deleting BSP brushes as soon as I insert static meshes and position them into the space. So that way I know which sections that I worked on and where I need to extend and work on next. Once the main hallway was blocked in, then we can begin to extend further. But I had to make sure that everything was working together in the main hallway first. I am working on the side hallways in a similar manner that we did on the main hallway. I blocked in the static meshes, make sure they lined up, made sure that the combination of different static meshes, walls, stairs, and floor look good, and once I'm happy with that combination, I take all of the static meshes and I duplicate them to the other side hallway. This saves a lot of time. And then if you want that hallway to be a little different so it's not an exact duplicate, just change a few static meshes, extend the floor, and then when we insert some props and use lighting, then we can change how the hallway looks so it's not an exact mirror image of the other one. Here I decided that the column that's going to be on the corner of a room should be thicker and more square. So I increased thickness by changing the scale on the x-axis, and then I noticed that also changes how the walls lined up. So I had to select all of the walls on this side of the hallway, all of the doorways, all of the columns, and just slightly move them over. And then I'm increasing the scale of the corner column on the other side of the hallway. At this point, the side hallways are blocked in, and it's time to begin setting up the walls as the hallway extends to the second floor. I decided to change static meshes that are lining up side hallways to a different textured static mesh, and then I used the same static mesh for the second floor as we did for the main hallway. So I'm trying to add a little variety of texturing and different static meshes that are being used. And here I duplicated the column to frame the hallway entry. But I really had to force myself not to try to detail too soon. You really want to continue forcing yourself to block the major architectural pieces of your structure first. Make sure you have that blocked in. Avoid any detailing that doesn't benefit the purpose of blocking in static meshes. Then once you have the major architectural pieces in and you have the structure of your environment, then we'll focus on the detailing using props and reworking some of the existing static meshes to tweak them and make them fit into certain sections of our hallway. Here I decided to insert the doorways that we're going to use for the elevator and the hallway doors before I continued to work on the second floor of the side hallways. The second floor is almost done. We just need to focus on blocking in the upper section, removing the BSP brushes, and creating an illusion that the environment extends beyond the main hallway. So we're not going to detail or expand on the second floor beyond what you see here. We simply want the stairs leading up to another area so it appears that the environment extends further than the focal point of the main hallway. As you've noticed, I am beginning to reuse already placed static meshes. So once you've blocked in certain sections of the map using the major architectural pieces, you begin to reuse them and duplicate them throughout the environment. Reusing static meshes throughout your map helps to keep the visual consistency of your level, which adds to believability of your environment. We are almost done with the second floor. We just need to duplicate a few pieces, such as the windows and the walls, position them in their location, and make sure that we cover up any gaps and add a few columns in between the walls. Once you have established in ways that you will use these static meshes and in which combination, and you've blocked in your focal point, the rest of the environment begins to come together very quickly. Usually it's the beginning initial part that's more free-flowing. You're still figuring things out, you're trying to get the correct position, the right combination, make sure that all the static meshes snap and align together. But once you've figured that out and you got that focal point down, then expanding for the rest of the environment becomes more of duplicating, aligning, and positioning process. So I closed up a few additional gaps in the ceiling, and I noticed that the upper column static mesh was not positioned properly. It had an additional seam, so I just needed to rotate for all of the columns on the window side of the hallway. I tried to find and take care of any inconsistency issues and any misaligning issues right away as I see them, so these problem areas don't spiral out of control. It takes me just a few seconds to fix and update, rather than trying to do it as a separate pass. I inserted a new static mesh for ceiling support, and I'm using it as additional detail on the bottom of the windows. It adds a nice additional detail, and it is also the same static mesh that I am using for the top for the ceiling support. Once I position it on the ceiling, I took and I duplicated those two supports all the way across for every other beam. I think it looks a lot more interesting when it's alternating every other beam instead of doing it for every single one across. At this point, I think that the main structure of the blocking process for major architectural pieces is done. I'm doing a final fly through to see where else I can add a few consistent columns, few additional beams, and add more visual consistency to the environment. I'm scaling these beams a little bit so they fit into the hallway frame, but I'm trying to leave most of this process during the detail pass when we work with props and do some of the resizing and tweaking of the major architectural pieces. At this stage, we're going to call it done for the major static meshes. In the next session, we're going to focus on a detail pass using props and doing some tweaking to the major props.